The Sony INZONE M10S is so fast, it's hard to believe it's even real. If you're looking for the fastest display technology money can buy and you want to know if this 480Hz OLED will finally make you less awful at games, this is it. The answer is yes, it will. Now, if that's all you wanted to hear me say, I'll have an affiliate link in the description below and pinned comment, which gives a kickback to the channel. But if you want to know all the tiny details about just how good or bad it is in every measurable way, well, stick around because I have a lot to share. And by the way, this is a completely unsponsored review. I bought the product myself thanks to my Patreon supporters, but I digress. The Sony INZONE M10S is a 27-inch 1440p 480Hz MLA OLED Gen 2 HDR monitor, which means infinite contrast for deep, inky, perfect black detail and near instantaneous response times with Gsync and Freesync support, HDMI 2.1, and shockingly Displayport 2.1 as well. But unfortunately, it's only half bandwidth, meaning that whether you use Displayport or HDMI, you will need to engage display stream compression, which can introduce some issues on Nvidia GPUs, such as long Alt-Tab times, which is disappointing considering the price. One thing that isn't disappointing, however, is the design aesthetic, which I can only describe as almost perfect. Not only is it a sleek, ultra-slim, sturdy design, but the monitor base can swing, get this, a full 360 degrees and is by far the smallest stand base I've seen, something other monitor manufacturers need to pay attention to. My only gripe is that it doesn't tilt left or right for some reason, but all those impressive specs come at a price, a very high one of $1,099.99, which is a really tough pill to swallow considering you can get 4K 240Hz OLEDs at a similar or even cheaper price that, let's be honest, put out a far more detailed picture, or pick up a 360Hz QD OLED, which has better colors for far less, only sacrificing a small amount of performance. But those monitors do have their own weaknesses, and with a 1-year limited warranty included, as well as by far the fastest 1440p panel I've ever seen, I recommend sticking through the whole review before making any decisions. Now, as you can imagine, the gaming experience on this monitor is unlike anything I've ever experienced before, and probably will be for you as well. The buttery smooth cursor movement with almost no perceivable blur, even just on the desktop, is something you have to feel and see for yourself to get an idea of what I'm talking about. But imagine spreading warm butter over your over a glass mouse pad that you don't have to clean. In games, I was blown away by the responsiveness, as my ability to track targets was certainly the best it's ever been, as targets moved swiftly in front of me in crystal clear detail that even a 360Hz monitor just can't compare to. I mean, take a look at these targets slowed down at the various refresh rates, and it's clear to see that 480Hz is approaching a near endgame level of speed and fluidity. Every other refresh rate looks almost choppy in comparison, making 480Hz the ideal option for those playing at the highest level on a 3-day bender of G Fuel. And even more importantly, the clarity in motion is astounding. Even fast-moving targets look almost identical to the example screenshot in this UFO test in a way that 240Hz or even 360Hz just fall short of. This is the first time I've ever seen something not noticeably blurred when moving at this speed. But the cherry on top is the overall system latency, which is unbelievably low, coming in at just 23 milliseconds, or one of, if not the fastest display I've ever tested. So is it good for gaming? The answer is yes. It is the best gaming display I've ever used when it comes to speed and fluidity. But what about HDR and accuracy? Well, the HDR on this monitor is overall decent thanks to the per pixel local dimming of OLED, leading to contrast levels that no other tech can compete with. But compared to OLED TVs, which get much, much brighter, it certainly pales in comparison and isn't particularly special compared even to other OLED monitors, both in window tests and real HDR scenes, where it falls a bit behind the competition, making it a bit less impactful for HDR imagery. Likewise, the color and accuracy aren't particularly great either. Unfortunately, WOLED, while excellent in SDR, still suffers from lower color brightness in HDR, and this monitor is no exception, coming in at just 69% DCI-P3, which is short of the 100% I like to see, so you can see most HDR content as intended. Also, unfortunately, SDR was wildly stretching colors, which I was able to mostly fix, and I will have the best settings for this display in my Patreon linked in the description below. But unfortunately, HDR cannot be fully fixed at this time on the current firmware, which can blow out details. I also did notice some minor vertical banding against gray screens, which isn't too uncommon for these WOLED displays. And finally, my last gripe is that, it's using a semi-matte coating. Now, thankfully, this new coating from LG is more of a semi-matte than a matte, so it's not nearly as oily or grainy than past coatings, at least in my experience, but it just won't ever look as crisp or vibrant as a true glossy coating like you see on TVs, phones, watches, and QD-OLED monitors. That said, while it does slightly blur and mute colors, I think at a 1440p resolution, this level of imperfection is acceptable since the resolution is just not quite high enough to fully take advantage of the clarity benefits a glossy coating can provide. But hopefully, regardless, future models are glossy. And finally, you will notice some minor fringing on some text since this is using an RGWB subpixel layout, which is a pretty big improvement, by the way, over their previous layouts, but I do find it to be less distracting than QD-OLED, and there will also be some minor VRR flicker in dark scenes like with any OLED. So is a 1440p 480Hz OLED with Displayport 2.1, because it's UHBR10, worth $1,100 roughly? Well, it depends on who you are. If you're someone looking for the fastest displays to get the smoothest motion and lowest response times, or want to have every advantage you can get, then yes, you should buy this monitor as long as you have a PC with a fast enough GPU and, more importantly, CPU to push out that many frames in competitive games. But should most people drop 1,100 clams on this? No, not for this price. Look, yes, it's the fastest and it's really impressive to see in person, but the difference between 240, 360, and 480 Hz is definitely diminishing and will continue to get even more diminishing the higher we go. And I think most buyers will be better off saving a lot of money and picking up a lower refresh panel or even a 4K 240 Hz for an overall much better picture, which I will have my top 4K panels listed below as affiliate links as well, by the way. But if you are someone who doesn't mind the price, then I do definitely recommend this display. I hope we see 480 Hz continue to come to more sizes and resolutions, and I'm giving this a 7 out of 10 certified recommended award, affiliate links below. Now, I'm just hoping to see a 4K 480 Hz OLED monitor soon with a true glossy finish to get the best of both worlds.